Our Congress preparations are at a very, very advanced stage. We are going to have our Congress on the 19th of December 2020, which is on Saturday. This Congress will be held at Sheraton Hotel in Harare. We will be holding this conference at the Harare International Conference Center. This is going to be a physical Congress. In other words, delegates are going to be ferried from across the country and are going to physically be at the venue. This Congress is a single issue Congress. It is simply about voting. Voting for the president to replace the late Morgan Tsvangirai. We have four delegates. We have four candidates. Dr. Thokozani Kupe, Senator Morgan Komichi, and Senator Elias Muzuri, and myself. The election is going to be conducted by an independent electoral commission that is headed by the Deputy Secretary-General of the Zimbabwe Congress of Trade Unions. It is made up of members of the civic society, members of the trade union movement, and some people from the churches. We were expecting a total of 3,000 delegates, and that's the figure that we are still expecting, although it looks like we may have slightly under that figure. This is putting into account certain factors like the inaccessibility of certain areas now. We were surprised that certain areas are already inaccessible because of the rains. We expect that that may affect the delegates who are going to come. We have made a lot of arrangements, security arrangements, mostly to deal with the possible disturbances of our Congress by certain elements that we suspect are bent on disturbing our Congress. So the Independent Electoral Commission is going to be given the voters' roll, I think, on Wednesday. This is the voters' roll that has been prepared and that is being verified by the provinces. Currently, all the provinces are verifying the voters' roll, and we expect that process to be completed and that voters' roll surrendered to the Independent Electoral Commission. The Independent Electoral Commission as well is overseeing the printing of the ballot papers. This election, we want it to be as free and as fair as possible, but we also want it to be as conventional as possible. So the ballot papers are going to be printed. We will print, I'm not so sure about the number, but it will be informed by the size of the voters' roll. We will print extra ballots, of course, to deal with the such issues as mistakes that a voter may make, and so on. As I've said, we have made arrangement for security. We have trained 20 COVID compliance enforcement officers. These are internal people who are going to usher the voters into the main auditorium. But in doing so, they have to make sure that there is compliance with COVID. So our people are going to get into the auditorium in batches of 100. And they will be 101. That is 100 delegates and 1 COVID compliance official. We have discussed with the police in Harare, and the indications are that they are going to allow us. They have verbally told us that they are going to allow us, subject, of course, to the Ministry of Health giving us a go-ahead. Our officers are currently engaging with the Ministry of Health, mostly to deal with our preparedness to deal with the COVID issue. And I think that we have done well. We had a meeting with them. They told us what they were expecting us to do, and we have complied with that. And we hope that our Congress will go on undisturbed. Ladies and gentlemen, the people who are eligible to come to Congress are members of the MDC-T. And these are people who have not joined other political parties. What this means is those people who have been expelled from the party for whatever reason, those people who have been recalled in the recalls that happened as senators, members of the National Assembly, as well as the councillors will not be eligible. Those people who are now members of the national executive committees, national councils, provincial executive committees, district executive committees, ward executive committees of other political parties cannot be delegates for the MDC-T Congress. This simply stands to reason. We are going to have this Congress to select a president for our party and hopefully a candidate for the 2023 elections. And if people from another political party come, they are basically coming to choose their opponent. It's akin to Dynamos choosing a coach for Highlanders, and that is not proper. Ladies and gentlemen, I was nominated together with 3 of my colleagues for the office of, to contest the office of President of the Movement for Democratic Change. I have accepted that nomination, and in accepting this nomination, I looked at a number of factors. I looked at the history that I have traveled in the democratic struggle. I started my politics in 1988 as a student at the University of Zimbabwe. I joined the Zimbabwe Unity Movement. From there, I was detained in Wawa prison in 1990 for writing the constitution of the Zimbabwe Unity Movement. I was to be a member of the drafting committee of the 4 days committee on the draft constitution of Zimbabwe. What I'm trying to tell you here is that the constitution that we finally drafted, the Zimbabwean constitution that we finally drafted under COPAC, was actually my 3rd attempt at writing a national constitution. In 1994, under 4 days, I was appointed together with the late Justice Sanzole, late Kempton Makamure, to form a committee to draft a constitution. We did draft the constitution. It wasn't a very popular draft, but it was called the Yellow Draft. The government rejected it, but we had drafted it. In 2001, we drafted a constitution of Zimbabwe, a draft constitution under the National Constitutional Assembly, and again, it was rejected by government. And then we have the COPAC draft. So I looked at that. I looked at my history in the democratic struggle, and I looked at what type of president the opposition needs at this point in time, what type of leader the opposition needs at this point in time, and most importantly, what type of leader the MDC-T requires at this point in time. And I thought that I met the grade. But I do have respect for my colleagues who are contesting me for this post. Dr. Kupe has a history that is well known. Engineer Mzuri has a history that is well known. Senator Komichi has a history that is well known. So as we get into this election, I am not overconfident of winning, but I am confident of winning. I think that the people have indicated already their voting preferences, but it is a contest, and I wish my colleagues the best of luck. But coming to the MDC-T, what we need to do is to transform the MDC into a credible change agent. The MDC had been made to look like a party which was not serious at all. So we need to make sure that we transform it into a credible change agent. And the first port of call is to internally transform the MDC. First of all, we must bring back the MDC to its founding values, the social democratic values that it is espoused at its formation. Secondly, we need to deal with the internal issues within the MDC. First of all, we must make sure that we must have at any given moment an elected leadership. So the passport to power within the party must be an election. Number two, we must have collective leadership. We do not want a party that is so individualistic. The opinion of the president carry the day and so on. We want to operate as an institution. We want it to operate via our organs. So the president must operate via his national standing committee, his national executive, his national council. It is the decision of those bodies that the president then implements. We must, which is number three, go to the issue of democratic decision making. Whenever we have important decisions to make, they must not be made in Harare only. The ideas must be cascaded to the grassroots so that people make an input into those decisions. So we are going to have democratic decision making. In the area of candidate selection, we are going to make it a rule that in selecting candidates, there must be free and fair primary elections. It is the local people who will have to choose their candidates through a free and fair primary election. So if you want to be a councillor, you have to be elected in a primary election first. And this is going to be an unbendable rule. If you want to be a member of parliament, first past the post, you have to be elected again by the district members of that district. So we want to make sure that when it comes to the women's quota, they are also democratically chosen. The 6 people, they must not be handpicked by the president, by the chairman, by the Secretary-General. There must be a democratic process for electing these women. We are also going to make sure that the principle, the 50-50 gender principle, is implemented. This principle is contained in our national constitution under section 2. It is also, part 2 of our constitution. It is also contained in article 5 of the MDC constitution. We are going to pursue the agenda to make sure that there is equality in representation between the genders. We do not believe, which is my last point, we do not believe that the youth are leaders of tomorrow. The youth are leaders of today. Therefore, we are going to reserve a special quota for the youths in all the elected positions, in council as well as in parliament. We are going to be dealing very decisively, and we have already started dealing with it. We are going to deal decisively with corruption in the areas that we control, in local authority. We are going to deal with that. And there should be no holy cows when it comes to dealing with corruption. So those are some of the things that we will immediately implement after the Congress. And I am sure that my colleagues also have an agenda similar to this. An agenda like this sets the MDC back to its founding principles. Coming to the issue of Matabeleland in particular, it is a region that has been marginalized, first of all, as a result of deliberate government policy. Immediately after the War of Independence, we saw in Matabeleland the Gokura Hundi, which was a war targeting people of a specific ethnic group, where you have harassment, where you have killings targeting people of a distinct ethnic group, that type of a war qualifies for the definition of genocide. So there was a genocide here in Matabeleland. We need to make sure that the victims of Gukurahundi are compensated, and they are compensated fully. And we are very, very aware of some of the problems that emanate from Gukurahundi. We have people who do not have enough documentation. We have people who were not able to go to school because they had lost their breadwinners. But we also had communities that were marginalized. So the compensation must look at the individual victim, but it must also look at the community as a victim, and compensation must be dealt with at that level. We are happy to note that the government is now talking about it, but talking about it is not enough. We want the government to make sure that the compensation is concretized. We want the government to make sure that documentation is easy. We also want the government to facilitate truth-telling. It is important that there must be truth-telling. But we all know that the harassment of people did not end with Gukurahundi. We know that there were victims of political violence post-Gukurahundi, and these have to be compensated as well. The main problem in Matabeleland, the chronic problem in Matabeleland, of course, is the problem of water. The Zambezi water project is almost dead, and so on. So we need to make sure that there is water in Matabeleland. The soils in Matabeleland are actually fertile. I know it because I do have some of my relatives in rural Matabeleland. And if they do have access to water, then we can have irrigation and we can have food sufficiency in this region. We also need to make sure that the government expedites some of the dam projects that are there to supply water into Bulawayo. We need to revive the industry in Matabeleland and so on. Just like in other parts of the country, we need to revive the industrial prowess of Matabeleland. Gukurahundi must not be just a nice catchphrase. It must be implemented. The resources that are in Matabeleland must benefit first and foremost the people of the region. First, just like if you go to Marange, you have rich diamond fields, but adjacent to those diamond fields, you see some of the poorest and unhappiest Africans on earth. That ought not to be. If you go to the Zambezi, communities who have been inhabiting that land for centuries are regarded as poachers in the Zambezi. There must be definite reserved quotas, fishing rights for the people who are living along the Zambezi. That is just one example of how devolution may work. We have gas in Lupane. That exploitation of gas in Lupane has to be expedited, and the local communities must be given preferences when it comes to jobs. But we must remember also that Matabeleland is not isolated. It is part of Zimbabwe. So other regions, other people from other regions must also be welcome here. But we must also make a deliberate effort to make sure that the local communities are given preference. You know, in Marange, the government of Robert Mugabe decided to establish a diamond polishing factory for diamonds from Marange in Dawendel, which is in Zimba, which is Mugabe's home area. We regarded that as gross injustice. But we want to make sure that there is peace, there is tranquility. We want to make sure that regionalism, tribalism, sexism are eradicated in this country. Tribalism does not make sense anymore. There has been a lot of intermarriages. There has to be coexistence of our communities. We must accept our diversity and we must cherish that diversity. While ZANU-PF and Mugabe may have brought independence, they were very poor in building our nation. We need to build the nation of Zimbabwe. It is a rainbow nation. It is a diverse nation, and it is beautiful in that diversity. I want to thank you.